Hi, it's Laura from the future. I was sitting here recording today's video and realized I didn't do an actual introduction. So real quick, jumping on here. Hi, my name's Laura and you're watching Purely Inspired Living. Today's episode is about showing you a little bit more in depth how I use my tarot cards to do a journaling practice and what that looks like for me to help you figure out how you might be able to use tarot for your journaling practice. So again, thank you so much for stopping by today, and here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm super excited to talk to you about this subject, and I hope you're really excited about it too. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. I am going to make a disclaimer though. Hear me out. So I am not a medical professional. I am not a licensed therapist. I'm not a licensed social worker. So this is just advice for information. So then it's not even advice. It is just information. Take what you will from it. This is, again, it's not advice, it's information. It's just me sharing my experiences with you and showing you how I utilize this tool. So if you need to seek a professional, if you are working with a professional, talk with them first before you start anything new. And that's just where we are. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. If you are following along on my podcast, you know that I have been talking about some different techniques that I use kind of for my mental health journey. So one week I talked about shadow work and kind of journaling, and if you're interested in hearing my take on that, and you've not been following along my podcast, you can go over to Spotify or where you get your podcasts and listen to my podcast about shadow work. It's Purely Inspired Living, so go ahead and go check that out. But I talked a little bit about journaling like that, and just yesterday I recorded one about how I use tarot as a tool for healing. So this is not going to be the exact same information. So if you haven't heard that one, again, feel free to go check that out after this video, or pause this video, go listen to the podcast, then jump back here. That would probably make more sense. But there we go. I use tarot as a tool for self-awareness. As I explained on my podcast, I was not in a place where I knew who I was or how I felt about things, and tarot has really helped me discover myself again. And that's where I'm going to leave that. More on that is on my podcast. So today I just kind of want to show you how I approach doing a tarot journaling practice and kind of what that looks like for me. So let's go ahead and I'll kind of give you a little inside look on what that looks like for me. So let me get my stuff together, and I'm probably gonna move to the floor because that's actually where I do most of my tarot readings at. So let me kind of get that set up and I'll meet you over there. Okay, so I have moved on the floor because honestly, this is where I sit and do most of my readings. I sit on the floor, usually because I have a larger space to kind of spread out. I mean, that's just it. I mean, it doesn't require a lot of space. I just tend to take up a lot of space. I don't know. So here's how I approach it. So usually what I'll do is I will do a meditation. I have an app. It's called Insight Timer. I've really been enjoying it. I just started using it in January. But I'll listen to a little meditation music. Usually it's like a chakra healing meditation. Not a long one, because I'm not an expert in meditating. Some days I do really well with meditating. I can really focus on not focusing, I guess, if that's, yeah, that's kind of it. And then some days, like, I just can't get my mind to focus on not focusing. I never know what I'm gonna get. I feel like Forrest Gump. But that's where we are. So I'll try that and just kind of have like a fresh mind space. Just kind of clear out the clutter, the junk. And then I will grab a few things. So I'll grab my tarot deck, the one I use most days. Thank you, Lily, for helping. The one I use most days is the Light Seers Tarot. It's by Chris Ann, and I got it from Amazon. I will caution you, if you're using Amazon to source your tarot and oracle decks, just make sure that you're buying ones that are actually produced by the artist, by the author, because there are a lot of fake ones on there. And there's some, like, there are other videos describing how to, like, tell if it's a fake or not. And that's not what this video is. I'm just gonna say, hey, use caution. If you're using Amazon, just do your due diligence to make sure that it's authentic, so the author can get their credit and their royalties and stuff. So again, another little disclaimer there. It's just part of it. But this is the one that I use. I really like the imagery. If you don't have a tarot deck and you're looking for one, I really like the modern ones. A lot of people use the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, that deck that has that traditional imagery. So if you've ever learned or know anything about tarot, even if you're brand new, you're probably thinking the Rider-Waite-Smith deck with that kind of, like, I don't want to say old-timey, like that medieval-ish imagery that you see. That is the traditional one. This one clearly uses that as inspiration, as source, but it has its own take, and I just like this. There are all different kinds of tarot decks out on the market. I really liked this one. I did not a ton of research, but I definitely was looking up different tarot decks. Like, if I pulled the tarot deck that I used to have, which I don't have it with me, so I can't show you. I will. She just really likes tarot. She usually likes to hang out with me when I'm meditating and doing my tarot, so there we go. I don't have the deck that I used to use, but it was kind of a learning deck based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith, and I was really struggling, so I just would do a Google search of a particular card to see what other cards look like with that same imagery, and this imagery really spoke to me. So that's where we are. This is the one that I use most often. So when I go to do like my tarot reading, I'll grab my deck, I will grab a pen, pencil, some kind of writing instrument, and I will grab a notebook. So I got this notebook at Five Below, because hello, $5 or below. It's in the title. But I really like it. It's spiral bound, and I can, like, flip the pages, like, all the way back, and I really like it. But this is specific for my tarot readings. So because I wanted to start having a daily tarot reading practice, I got a notebook specifically for that. So when I know, so they're all in one place, for one. I can always go back and look at a reading that I had done prior. I have done that a couple of times where I've done a tarot spread one day, and then it's been, like I said in my podcast, I've been doing this for about a year. So I haven't done it a whole lot, but I have done a couple times where I've gone back. Before, I was just writing them in whatever notebook I grabbed. So I can't even find all of my tarot readings that I did, even at the very beginning, because I don't know which notebook I wrote them down in. So this way, they're all in one spot. I can go back and review what has happened in the past. I can redo a spread, and not like redo, but like it's kind of like revisiting. It's like a new place. So if I do a reading one month, I can go back months. I can in months in the future I can do it again and get a totally different reading, because that's just how it works, based off of what's going on in my life, based off of how I'm feeling in that moment. Again, if you want to understand my take on reading tarot, that's in the podcast. So that's just how I kind of set it up. So I will, when I've done my meditation, when I've like gotten comfortable, I'll grab my deck and I will shuffle. And I've seen shuffling, I don't want to tear up the cards, so I'm not going to do like your standard like shuffling. So I do something weird where I just like kind of like chunk it up into sections, and I just grab chunks and then I just grab off the top. It takes a while. It's not like pretty, but this works for me. I feel like it gets them shuffled well enough without damaging anything. And this, since it's like monotonous, like you just do this. I'm talking to you while also picking up these cards. It's, you just do it. So then I can really focus on the question I have, or what kind of just like really get a focus in on what I'm getting ready to do. If I grab a couple cards at a time, it really is okay. This is not a strict method at all. I just do this until all the card piles are back in this main deck. Again, maybe that's not how it should be done. That's how I've been doing it. It's been working. Like I said, I really like these cards. I want them to last, so I don't want to damage them by shuffling like I would traditionally shuffle, which I'm a really, really bad shuffler. So if you've ever played a game of cards before, you know that I'm not good at shuffling. And then once I feel like I've gone through the whole thing, and I wasn't planning on doing that with you guys, but you know, thanks for hanging out with me. But this is pretty much it. I'll get all these back together, and then I will cut the deck. Like I said, I don't spend too long on this part. I just try to make sure that I've gotten through all of the cards. I feel like they're all gone through. I split them into 3 piles. I try to make sure they're pretty even. Occasionally, I will just like, they're not even right now. So normally what I do is like, I will even them out. Okay. And then I just pick them up in a different order, and I pull from the top. So if I'm doing a 3 card spread, 1, 2, 3. So I will have thought of a question, or 3 different questions actually. If I'm using like today's energy, so like what's the energy of the day, what's the lesson, how do I recognize this, or something along those lines. I usually just make them up. You can find spreads on Pinterest or other places. I usually make them up. I kind of feel like I get more out of the reading from this deck when I ask my own questions, when I don't use a predetermined spread. I mean, take what you will from that. Maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe it's the intention of the cards. I have no idea. I just know that when I come up with my own questions, when I'm not using a predetermined spread that I've gotten from somebody else, when I'm coming up with my own questions, I get the best reading. So, you know, take that, do with that what you will. So I pull straight from the top, I lay them down, and then the first thing that I do is I look at the bottom card. So this is known as the shadow card, and the shadow card represents the subconscious, like what's going on deep below the surface, underneath the answer to these questions. This is what's going on below the surface. And in this case, it's the Emperor. And that's kind of cool because he came up in a reading I did yesterday. So that's interesting. So this is what's going on underneath. Then, so what I do, I will turn to the page. I'll have it dated. I'll say what tarot deck I'm using or oracle deck, and just like if it's a regular daily tarot reading or if it's a specific spread, and where I've gotten, occasionally I will use somebody else's spread that's on Pinterest or on Instagram, and I'll write down, I'll make note of where I've gotten that from if I've not come up with it on my own. I'll show you what that looks like in my notebook here in a minute, but I take my pen, I date if it's a regular tarot spread or if I've gotten it somewhere where it came from, write down my questions, and then I will write down the shadow card, and I'll list what the shadow card is, and then I'll say what's coming up in that moment. Like, what does this card mean? So hopefully you can see this card, and if not, then I will plug it in so you can see it up close. This is the Emperor card. There's a lot of reds. There's a lot of bold images. I know this card to mean leadership, divine masculine. It can mean Aries. If you know anything about astrology, it's the card for Aries. He's holding a chess piece. So that tells me he's a strategic thinker. He's sitting on top of Mars. So again, if you're into astrology, Mars and Aries goes together, but Mars being the god of war, so we're talking about someone who's really assertive. And he's sitting on a chessboard. So not only is he holding a chess piece, he's sitting on a chessboard. So again, strategic, he's a thinker, he's a leader. Okay, so that's what I would list. I would list kind of the things that are jumping out at me, and that's what I do. So I do that. Then I'll flip over the next card. This is the Seven of Cups. So the answer to my first one, and I didn't pose a specific question. So, I mean, you could definitely read from these cards to kind of clear out some mind clutter, and make you think think a little strategically, think a little bit more in depth. But I'm not doing this for any specific reason. But then I would write down, next after the shadow card, and I've written all that stuff down, then I would say the first question, Seven of Cups. What's jumping out at me? Well, there's a blue background. Blue's pretty common. It's cups, so you see all these cups around. Cups represents emotions, or sometimes like psychic abilities, if you read it that way, but usually you read it as like emotion. And there are like ladders everywhere. There's water coming out of this one cup. There's a snake. I mean, if you know anything, if you listen to my podcast on shadow work, you know I don't like snakes. So that's kind of like, so like this card tells me he's trying to make a choice, and some choices might be better than others. So that's what I would write down. And I would go through all of my cards, just writing down what came up. The second one, Eight of Pentacles. The last one, the Seven of Swords. So I just write those down, what images, what's coming up. I will grab my booklet and I'll read through what this tells me. And then after I've done all of that, then at the very bottom, I will set up my journal, and I'll title it journal so I know it's separate from the rest of the reading. And then I will go in depth of what that means, like what this all means to me in this moment. So let me show you a journal entry where I've done that. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my date, the deck that I've used, and this was just like a daily tarot spread. So then these are my questions. All right, so where in my life do I always see gratitude? Where in my life do I never see gratitude? And how can I still recognize, or how can I start to recognize gratitude more? All right, and then so I pulled my cards. shuffled like I showed you and cut the deck and then stacked them up. Then I pulled the shadow card, which was the Nine of Wands. So the Nine of Wands was resilience, determination, defiance, and boundaries. The card I pulled to answer number 1 was the Knight of Swords and kind of like what that means. The answer to number 2 right here, the Page of Wands came up, and then the third one was actually the Devil card and then what that means. And then after I kind of did all of that, I labeled my journal part and then journaled. This is the journaling part. So out of the whole page, I don't normally do a full page journaling. I will have the section up here where I say what each tarot card means to me in that moment. So we can flip through and look at some of these. So the Moon and Stars tarot list. So like I have several decks. These are just like introductory things. I have a Jane Austen tarot deck. This ink is kind of fading, but again, so the date, what deck I used, which one is it, how can I get my mind organized, what do I need to keep my mind, or what do I need to keep my mind calm, and what do I need to understand for my mind being chaos, or what do I need to gain from that. So shadow card and kind of what's going on here. So it was the Ten of Cups, it's usually happiness, all of that. The answer to the first one right here came up Ten of Pentacles. The card for the second question, Ten of Swords, and the third was the Four of Cups. And then I journaled about it. And my chicken scratch handwriting. So then that's what all of these look like. So some are not quite a full page. Most are right around that full page. Now this one, I combined an oracle deck with my Light Seer's Tarot. So work your Light Oracle and Light Seer's Tarot. This is just for my information, and this is just like educational stuff. So this is where I used an oracle deck, Work Your Light. And it's a daily oracle pool. I titled it, the date, and that. And on that, I still read, I set it up like my normal tarot spread. Okay, so I still have my 3 questions. I pulled the shadow card and then my 3. And then this, as you can see, was a larger journaling section. So usually it'll be about half a page. This one was about 2/3 of a page. But it doesn't really matter. You can write more, you can write less. But I've got all of these pages of tarot, where I've done tarot spreads. And I've written on the inside. So the cover is unique. This is the only one. And to me, this kind of looked like similar artwork to the Rider Waite Smith deck. So I was like, oh, perfect. This will be my tarot deck, or my tarot journal. But this where I started, I just pulled one card, and I didn't necessarily read the shadow card. So I just pulled one card, and it was the Knight of Cups, and then a larger note section on what the Knight of Cups meant to me. And this was because I was really trying to learn what each card was supposed to represent. And I have a little note, and then I journaled about how that looked. So this is where I started to start reading the shadow card, actually. But there's a lot more space between, like, I was still learning. I was very much still learning. And by the time I get to here, I don't necessarily need to write as many notes on the individual card. So then I have more space to do my journal, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's pretty much what that looks like. Here, I'll get back over to my desk and we can see, I'll show you some more of what the cards look like. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you like a few cards, but these are the images that are on each of these cards. And so here's the Queen of Pentacles, the Two of Swords, the Nine of Wands, the Five of Cups. I really like the imagery of these cards. Here's the Three of Wands. It's just, I really love the colors. I like it, and it means more to me than some other decks. I can show you actually a few of my other decks here. I have a Jayne Austen tarot deck. Actually, this is the first one that I purchased when I was just like, you know what? I'm doing it. Get me a tarot deck. I really love Jayne Austen, so I was like, this will be perfect. And actually, I just started using it again, and I was like, okay, since I know the cards a little bit better, I'm able to get more from it. But at the beginning, it was rough. I didn't know what the cards meant. I didn't know what they were supposed to mean. And it comes with a guidebook. It has a beautiful little guidebook that tells you all about each card, what it represents. But I was really just struggling with it. So yeah, here's what a few of the cards look like. So these look more like your typical playing cards with like the Eight of Clubs and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. That was the first one. I also had the Moon and Stars Tarot deck, which I just got not too long ago. And so that's what some of these cards look like. This is has a more astrology kind of tint to it. So I've not used it very many times, but I like it so far. But my go-to will always be the Light Seers Tarot, just because, again, it's so easy for me to get a lot from it. And again, go back to my podcast, listen to my take on how I use it for like mental health, not necessarily for divination. So I know I showed you my journal, and I pose questions, I ask them. You don't have to, if you feel like any type of question, whether it's future based or not, is divination, and maybe it is, I just don't know, then you can do what like I just did, where I shuffled them. Wasn't thinking any question, I shuffled them, and shuffle however you do it, and lay out a single card or 3 cards or whatever it is. And then you just pick it up and you look at that image. What's jumping out at you? And it gives your mind something to focus on. But especially if like we're talking about the Suit of Cups, which is all about emotions, it really makes me focus on what emotions are coming up for me. How do I process that? If I feel like, so the Seven of Cups, he was like making a difficult choice. So here, Seven of Cups. I see water. I know that it's symbolism. This is symbolism. It's just like in literature. So when you read a book, any form of literature, and you're reading it for symbolism, you're reading in depth to it and relating that to your life, it's the exact same thing as what you're doing here. So if you feel like there are some like religious conflicts with that, for one, if it makes you uncomfortable, don't do it. But I really connect the two. I really think it's the exact same thing. Authors use symbolism and imagery to get an emotion across, and then the reader ingests that and kind of figures out what that means to them and what that looks like for them. And I just think it's the same thing. I just like using the cards instead of reading a book and journaling about it. And this helped me do a journal practice. But again, that's all in the podcast. But anyways, if we're going back, and even if I didn't ask a question, I just pulled this card. And so I see this guy. Now, if it's male, female, that part doesn't necessarily matter. You got your snake, you got your water, you got ladders, all these cups are overturned, there's a bat wing, there's actually a skull in this one. So he's this is telling me this guy is trying to make some difficult choices. Some of these choices are going to help him work up the ladder, get to reach his goals. And some of them are going to have like some scary stuff in them. So these are difficult choices. So then I would journal about, okay, where in my life right now am I really figuring out some difficult choices? Okay, if I'm making difficult choices in, should I eat dairy or not? Because I'm actually currently not eating dairy and it's tough. Okay, I love cheese. But anyways, so like where in my life am I making difficult choices? And what emotions, back to that water, what emotions are coming up? Like, it's tough, it's difficult. I've got to weigh my likes versus dislikes. I've got to weigh my health versus what it might look like without that. So, I mean, it really is just processing these emotions. When I go back to the Emperor card, which was my shadow card in that spread that we just did, so underneath in the subconscious layer, we're looking at like divine masculine, and we all parts of us have masculine and feminine. It doesn't matter what we are. Okay. That's not the purpose. So where underneath am I needing to make some strategic choices? I'm going to need to be assertive, not necessarily in a forceful way, but he's sitting there calmly, he's cool, collected. So it's assertive in a calm mannered way. He's not rushing, he's not angry. He knows his business. He knows how to think and what he thinks and where he's going. Part of that chess, you've got to think so many steps ahead. So underneath everything, I'm working towards, my thoughts are focused on this strategic thinking, this divine masculine idea, this being more assertive kind of thing. And then I would just journal about it. I would just write down, okay, when I think about needing to be more assertive, how do I feel about that? Well, let me tell you, I feel a little anxiety because I don't tend to be a very assertive person. There are times when I definitely can be, and times that I naturally am, but they're few and far between. So honestly, it's like that would be a lot. And then I would journal about, where can I start to practice that assertiveness in a positive way? So like, you hear assertive and you think like, that's a little too much, you need to back it off. There are times when it calls for stepping out a little bit, and it's just giving my mind a focus on, hey, this is something that I can be thinking about. It's good for us to be assertive when we need to assert our boundaries. If we're in an uncomfortable situation, you need to be assertive to get yourself out of that. And this is just training my brain to process these. And when this emotion comes up, because being assertive is a word, but there's emotions that are attached to it. So when these emotions come up, how do I respond to them? How do I process them? And I journal about it. So it really is just a way for me to focus on some of these concepts, like being assertive, like making difficult choices, and focusing on how they show up for me in my body. Do I feel anxious? All of those things. So, okay, I think that's about all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. It was kind of fun for me to show you that. So if you have any questions, if you want to know any more information, leave a comment, shoot me an email, or DM on Instagram, whatever. I'll list all of that stuff in the show notes below, in the show notes. So thanks for stopping by again. If you'd like and subscribe, share this information, I really appreciate that. And until next time, I hope you stay inspired.